Hey, what's up everyone? This is going to be a work solutions video for 2-unit mathematics for the 2014 HSC past paper. Alright, so just the general reading instructions, 5 minutes reading time, 3 hours working time. All pretty simple stuff, nothing out of the ordinary. I'm sure many of you have tried these at home, but what you're going to see in these next couple of videos will be how I work them out on the fly. There's no preparation involved in this. I'm just going to do the questions as I see them, and hopefully you can follow along with my working, and I'll talk through what I'm doing at each stage. And so it's not too daunting. I'll break the series up into several videos so you can jump to whichever section I'm at the time that you want to look at a specific question or something like that. Alright, so let's get started. So this is section 1, which is the multiple choice section of the paper. And they're actually deceptively difficult questions, so they're not always just straightforward, see the answer, write it down. Some of them actually do involve working out, and we'll go through it now. So for this question, number 1, it's asking what is the value of pi squared over 6, correct to 3 significant figures. So to do this question, the best way to start is to put that number into your calculator. So pi squared over 6 into calculator, and what we get is 1.6449, etc. And so it's asking for 3 significant figures, and that means how many of the first non-zero numbers that are needed to describe this number to 3 significant figures. So we're looking for 3 figures starting from the first non-zero, which is here, 1, 2, 3. And that doesn't get rounded anywhere, and so we're left with 1.64, which is answer A. Alright, so we'll move on to question 2 now, and this question is asking us, which graph best represents y equals x minus 1 squared? And so we know it's a parabola because of this squared term, and the easiest way to find out which of these it is looking at when this equals 0. And so this is going to equal 0 when x equals 1, because 1 minus 1 is 0, and so when x equals 1, y equals 0, and so we come over here to these graphs and we see that when x equals 1 here, y equals 0, so the answer must be B. Alright, so now on to question 3. Which is the solution to the equation log 2 x minus 1 equals 8? So what this question is asking is 2 to the power of 8 equals whatever's in this bracket. So 2 to the power of 8 equals 256. So this bracket equals 256. And so you can get 2 to the 8 just by putting it into your calculator. You don't need to know that off your top of your head. And so 256. So now we know that x minus 1 equals 256, which means that x equals 257, and so the answer must be D, 257. Alright, on to question 4. Which expression is equal to the integral of e to the 2x? Now, this one is pretty straightforward. We just have the integral of e to the 2x, and so we know that that is equal to e to the 2x, because when anything to the power of when e to the power of anything is integrated, that power doesn't change. But what we do is we divide by the derivative of the power term. So 2x, the derivative of 2x is 2, so we divide by that. So that is the answer for the variable term, but we've got to plus our c term because it's an indefinite integral, so there's no limits up here, which gives us e to the 2x over 2 plus c, which we can see as answer C over here. The next question is question 5. And it's asking, which equation represents the line perpendicular to 2x minus 3y equals 8, passing through the point 2, 0. So a property of perpendicular lines is that the gradients, when multiplied together, equal -1. So first things first, we'll find out what the gradient of this line is, and we'll do that by rearranging the equation to be 3y equals 2x minus 8, or y equals 2x minus 8 over 3. So now we know that the gradient of that first line, m, equals 2 over 3. And so if -1 divided by 2 over 3 equals m2, m2 must equal negative 3 over 2, which is just the inverse of that negative, of course. And so now we have to construct a new line with that gradient. And so we can write that as y equals negative 3 over 2x plus c. And if we rearrange that, we get 2y plus 3x minus c equals 0. But we see up here we actually need the constant number on the other side, so I'll rewrite that as 2y plus 3x equals c. And if you're wondering why it didn't go to 2c over here, c just stands for constant. It could be anything. It doesn't matter if it's 2c, 5c, 6c. At the end of the day, it's just going to be a single digit number, either 4 or 6 or negative 4. And so we have 2 y's and 3 x's. And so we can get rid of these two because they have negative values for the x's and the y's. And we come up here, and so 3x plus 2y equals a constant. Now, we know that it has to pass through the point 2, 0, so we can substitute in these values. And so when x equals 2, that equals 6. And when y equals 0, that equals 2. And 6 plus 0 does not equal 4. And so a is out, which leaves b. So we know b has to be the right answer, but we'll check that. 6 plus 0 equals 6. Yep, b is the right answer. Alright, on to question 6. Which expression is a factorization of 8x cubed plus 27? So this is actually quite a difficult question for multiple choice, but what we can work out from this line of answers here and this line of answers here is that all of the 2x's are the same and all of the 4x squareds are the same, and that's the only thing that can make an x cubed term, so we can ignore the x cubed because it's the same for all answers. And same for the 27. The negative 3 and negative 9 is going to go to positive 27. The 3 and the 9, positive 27. Negative 3, negative 9, still positive 27. And the plus 3 and the plus 9 are still going to make that positive 27. Which means that the only difference between these answers is the number of x squareds and the number of x's. So what we have to work out is how many x squareds and how many x's are left over in each of these equations when we expand it out, and we need them to equal to 0 because there's no x squared and no x term in this equation up the top given in the question. So we'll have a look at this. 2x, ignore this x squared term because we don't need it to go to x cubed, and we say 2x plus times 12x is going to equal 24x squared. And then we look at the negative 3. Negative 3 times 4x squared is going to be negative 12x squared. And we see that those x squared terms don't cancel out, so A can't be the correct answer. Now on to B. 2x times negative 12x, negative 24x squared, plus 3 times 4x squared, plus 12x squared. So again, the x squared terms don't cancel out, so B can't be the right answer. On to C, we have 2x plus 6, so 2x times plus 6x is 12x squared. And then we have negative 3 times 4x squared, so that equals negative 12x squared. So this is looking good because those two cancel out to 0. And then we go back to this 2x and we say 2x times minus 9 is negative 18x. And then negative 3 times 6x, well that's also negative 18x, and they don't cancel out to 0, so C has to be wrong, which means that D is the only answer left, so we know that has to be the right answer. But just to be sure, we'll work it out anyway. 2x times negative 6x is negative 12x squared. And then we have 3 times 4x squared, well that's plus 12x squared. Then we have 2x times 9, which is plus 18x, and we have plus 3 times negative 6x, which is negative 18x, and so they cancel out, and they cancel out, leaving us with 0, which means that the only terms that are left in this expansion is 8x cubed plus 27, so D is the correct answer. Now on to question 7. I need a bit of a break after that last one. Very long question for a multiple choice. This one's not much better. It's asking how many solutions of the equation sin x minus 1 times tan x plus 2 equals 0 lie between 0 and 2 pi. So we have to recognize that this equation equals 0 when this bracket equals 0 or this bracket equals 0, because 0 times anything equals 0. So when does this bracket equal 0? Well, that equals 0 when sin x equals 1. And we'll draw out our graph for sin x, and we know that it goes up and down like that, and that's 2 pi. And it starts at 0, and it hits 1 up here, and so you can see that between 0 and 2 pi, it only gets to a value of 1 once for sin x, and so that means that only once will this bracket equal 0, and so we add 1 to our tally of how many solutions there are. Now we'll look at the tan x plus 2 bracket. When does that equal 0? Well, that equals 0 when tan x equals negative 2. So tan x has to equal negative 2, and we'll draw our graph of tan x, and we know that tan x looks like this. And so here, and here, and so we've got asymptotes dividing all of these, and that's 0, and 2 pi should be here. And so we're saying how many times does this equal negative 2 between 0 and 2 pi? We can see that it's only negative here, and it's a function, so it doesn't go up and then down again. So we know that it can only be negative 2 there, and so that's 1 more for our tally, which means that there's only 2 solutions where this equals 0, which means that the answer must be B. And you can just see that from the graphs. Only once does that equal only once does that equal 1, and then only once does this equal negative 2 in the desired range. Alright, so this question is asking, which expression is a term of the geometric series 3x minus 6x squared plus 12x cubed, etc. And so what we can see immediately is that the even powers of x are negative and the odd powers of x are positive. And so that can rule out a couple of answers for it immediately. And so that x to the 10 should be negative, but it's not, so that's ruled out. And this x to the 11 should be positive, but it's negative, so D's gone, which leaves us B and C. And so now we have to figure out which of these numbers is correct for either the 10th term or the 11th term. And so what we can see that this pattern is it's 3 times 2 to the power of the term, where that is the 0th term, 1st term, 2nd term, etc., because it's doubling each time. 3, 6, 12, 24, and so on. And so if we put the 10th term into that, we get 3 times 2 to the 10, and bring out the trusty calculator, and get 3 times 2 to the 10, and that equals 3072. And so we know that the 10th term is 3072. And so what's the x power on the 10th term? Well, that is going to be x to the 11, because on the 0th term it's x to the 1. And so it's x, if that's 2 to the 10, this is x to the 10 plus 1, because for 2 to the 0 it's x to the 1. And so now we have the full term, which is 3 times 2 to the 10 times x to the 10 plus 1, which means that we're looking for x to the 11, which means that the answer must be C. Hope you guys followed that one. It was a bit complicated at the end there, but I think we got there in the end. Alright, so for question 9, the graph shows the displacement of x of a particle moving along a straight line as a function of time t. Which statement describes the motion of the particle at point P? Okay, so for this one, the displacement is x and the time is t. So here it's moving forward, up, 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 and then it moves back, and then it moves up again. Alright? So is the velocity negative and the acceleration positive at point P? Well, it's moving backwards, so the velocity is negative, but the acceleration, you can see it's past the point of inflection here, so it goes up, velocity, and it is accelerating, but then it's slowing down here, turning around, but then it's speeding up again in the positive direction here along that curve, so you know that the acceleration must be positive, but the velocity is negative, and so that leaves answer A as the correct answer. Now on to question 10. 3 runners compete in a race. The probabilities that the 3 runners finish the race in under 10 seconds are a quarter, a sixth, and 2/5 respectively. What is the probability that at least one of the 3 runners will finish the race in under 10 seconds? So we're looking for the probability that at least one. So that means it's going to be equal to 1 minus the probability that none of them finish under 1 minute. Or under 10 seconds, sorry. So 1 minus, now what's the probability that none of these finish? Well, what we do is we change that to 3 over 4, 5 over 6, and 3 over 5. And we want none of them to happen, so we multiply these all together. So we get 3 over 4 times 5 over 6 times 3 over 5 equals, and I'll get my calculator out for that one, 3 over 4 times 5 over 6 times 3 over 5, and so that is 5/8, which is answer D. You could also work it out by taking the probabilities that they each finish and then summing the different probabilities, but that is a method that takes much longer because you have to account for the overlap of when one person finishes, the chance that the other person also finishes in that scenario as well, and so you have overlap of the probabilities, and it makes it a much more difficult question if you don't work out the probability that none finish in under 10 seconds and minus that off the 1. And that concludes the multiple choice section for this paper, so I'll see you in the next video where we go on to the long answers. Alright, hope you enjoyed it.